Heading into the third rapid game of the tiebreak, Gelfand was one game down, so he's really fighting for his life. Okay, in this game he had the white pieces. He opened with d4, and once again we had this kind of Slav, or indeed semi-Slav. And previously Anand had played e6 in their match. Today he played bishop f5, of course a very normal continuation, which was discussed a great deal in the Kramnik-Topalov match, actually, in 2006. But Anand has done this before, and it's a very standard continuation. So Gelfand wouldn't have found this too surprising. Okay, once again Anand has given up his bishops. I've got to ask him how whether he values bishops stronger than knights, or, you know, that was always Fischer's opinion, that a bishop is worth something like 3.5 points or maybe even 4 points against a knight 3, but clearly Anand has a different value system. Okay, here we go. It's a pretty standard position, and queen c2 and queen e7 from Anand. Rook c8. Now this is a tense position. Very often white plays e4 here, and you could say that white has a very slight advantage. Of course he has a space advantage here, but black is so solid in these kind of positions, and Anand is very experienced indeed in playing them. So he didn't go for that. Instead Gelfand, he was playing very quickly actually. He played c5. So that's a very committal move. And now white has to take care. Of course you'd like to play b4 and b5, but the problem is, well, let's play b4 and see what happens. Black then plays e5 and has excellent counterplay on the king side, possibly after e4, or maybe taking here. And don't forget that g-pawn, that can roll down the board and open some lines against the king. And if you notice, all of white's pieces are on the queen side, so the king could be in trouble. So therefore, instead of playing the immediate b4, Gelfand played f4. Now that is a very committal move indeed. It's well motivated, of course, because the two pawns now prevent black breaking with e5, and it cuts this bishop out of the game. But the problem is, if black were ever to break through, then the king really would be weak. So f4 is a very double-edged move, probably a good move. But okay, let's see what happens. Anand played knight e8, and then came rook b1 and g5. So this is the point. He's already opening lines, so this is such a double-edged position. White is attacking on the queen side, Anand with black attacking on the king side. f5. Okay, so that gives greater control over e4. b5, and Anand was just playing very quickly. It was as though you know, adrenaline was still coursing through their veins after the end of game 2, where they were both rattling the moves out very, very quickly, and they hadn't slowed down at all, which might have been a mistake. Anand now played knight ef6. This was definitely an error. As we'll see in a second, it would have been better to play knight df6 and then go into e4, and this is perhaps playable for black. Instead knight ef6 came, which looks so natural, but is a big mistake. Gelfand took and played bishop a6, strong move. Now of course you would like to simply move the rook away. The problem is this leaves the c-pawn vulnerable. White would like to play bishop b7 immediately, but actually there are some very funny tactics with, let's see if we can play that. There's some very strange tactics indeed with knight c5, that's checking the king. King comes here and then d4, and you'll notice a pin. So in that way black wins the piece back. So before black does that, sorry, let's just see that, you have to play knight e2, and that stops any nonsense with knight c5. And black has a whole move to defend against this, but bishop b7 is very strong indeed, and if that one falls, then black's position is falling apart. You'll notice this bishop is still locked out of the game. So Anand, I think with a heavy heart, played rook c7. Now that looks so ugly because the rook just blocks that bishop. Terrible. And here, well, it was clear that Gelfand was doing very well. Bishop e3, obviously developing a piece isn't bad, connecting the rooks, but also specifically stopping any of that nonsense with knight c5. Okay, knight e4 played. I mean, positionally, black looks very good here, but on the queen side, he's getting destroyed. And in fact, Gelfand, if he'd just taken his time in this position, could have won against Gelfand. He could have played knight takes e4. And this is a winning move. If pawn takes bishop, then knight d6. And black is not going to escape from that one. I mean, it is so ugly. These pieces just tread on each other's toes. They cannot move at all. Must be a winning position for white. And if f takes e4, we just take on e5. Knight takes, and there's no alternative here. You simply cannot save the rook on, the bishop on b8. So queen takes e5, and white is just a piece up here. So those are the principal variations. What is absolutely clear is that knight takes e4 is a winning move, but Gelfand played too quickly. Anand already had a big time advantage, something like 10-minute time advantage, and obviously that rattled Gelfand. So he played too quickly in this position. Instead of knight e4, he played bishop takes e5, which is not a bad move, but Anand survived. In fact, you could still play knight e4 here, but Gelfand took the bishop too quickly, and after knight g6, black survived. In some ways, after this exchange, you know, Anand has just managed to get rid of his worst piece on b8 for a very active piece. And here, after queen g7, although white is a pawn up, in fact, Anand had excellent counterplay against the pawn on d4, and this is a very strong pawn chain. So Anand should have been okay, and well, later on he missed several chances to make an easy draw. But eventually, after quite a few adventures, I don't have time to go through all the moves, Gelfand, through some absolutely brilliant play when he was so short of time, had seconds left on his clock, managed to reach this endgame where he was 2 pawns up. So could Gelfand win this and get back into the match? Anand here played a mistake. I think it might be possible to draw with king h4. And there are some nice tricks here. For example, if you move the king here, well, hoping for rook takes pawn, then of course there's rook here winning. Black plays rook takes pawn, and that's stalemate. That's a lovely trick, but not untypical for rook and pawn endings. Okay, so what if c6? Well, we give a check, and then we take the pawn. Okay, so white plays rook c8, and now there's a very clear threat to play c7, and then it's not possible to stop. Rook check somewhere, and c8 winning. So black plays king g3, threatening a checkmate. The king has to shuffle across. We play king f3, again threatening checkmate. And now if the king shuffles across again, then this will be a winning move. And c7 again, and a check, and the pawn queens. So black plays rook e2, and then rook e7, I think is drawing, and then the king runs back. The rook covers the check here, there's no check on e8, and I think black's king gets back in time, and that's a draw. But well, If there's a hole in my analysis, then I'm sure someone will let me know very quickly. So I think king h4 was still a draw from Anand, but instead he played king f5, and now he's on the ropes, and he should have lost this position. King e6, h4, the pawn goes forward, and rook c8. Of course, you can't take here, you're too slow. Pawn goes through, you can't get back in time. So Anand just waited, and keeping white's king blocked in, can't come up. So Gelfand waited. Gelfand was gaining a bit of time. Each time he made a move, you get 10 seconds added on the clock. And now he took the plunge and pushed the h-pawn. Let's see what happened. Rook e5, h6, rook here, and rook h8. Anand took the pawn, and now Gelfand played an inexplicable blunder. Well, we can explain it. He was down to his last few seconds. He played rook h7, and after king d6, they actually agreed a draw. There is nothing that white can do here. You can play the king forward, but well, we just give a check here, and the king comes across, and we're going to play another check, and the king comes across and stops the h-pawn. But if we just go back a few moves, in this position, instead of rook h7, white could play king g3, and I think this just wins. Now, the first point is that the king cannot come across to stop the h-pawn. You play h7 straight away, and because of this devastating trick, let's just see that. Rook here, white wins, there's no defense. So it's not possible to bring the king across. So black can only wait. And now king g4. Okay, let's see. Rook h2, well, the king comes up the board. You can check the king in front of the pawn, but in this position, rook g8 is a simple win. And the rook comes back. You move the king across, and the pawn goes through. For example, that's one way to win. So Anand drew this position by the skin of his teeth, but well, really what it was down to was that he was still playing very fluently and very quickly, and Gelfand found himself under time pressure right from the word go. He was at a time disadvantage. So Anand, one game up. After 3 games, Gelfand would have to win the 4th game to stay in the match. See you in the next clip for game number 4.